We have some pretty big news out of Minnesota with the fact that Kirill Kaprizov apparently is toying with the idea of going back to the KHL. And we also have news that the Blackhawks and the Leafs have shown interest in guys like Seth Jones and Dougie Hamilton. We'll discuss those possibilities and more coming up next. Well, welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some pretty substantial news coming out of the Minnesota Wild organization regarding star rookie Kirill Kaprizov. Now, as you know, he's the odds-on favorite to win the Rookie of the Year award for the Calder Trophy. Had a fantastic season. Looks like he has the possibility of being a huge star in the NHL, but will he even stick around to fulfill that? Only time will tell, but right now, the Wild are having a very hard time negotiating-wise with their star rookie, and there's some reports that he might be toying with the idea of going back to Russia. I mean, the Wild waited 5.5 years for him after he was drafted to come to North America and join their organization. Obviously, he's a older, more mature player, breakout star this year. That would be such a huge blow if he indeed did leave and went back and played in the KHL. Now, here's the information that came out last night. They got everybody talking. There was a tweet from Kevin Weeks. Of course, Weeks works for the NHL Network. He's certainly somebody who's well connected and has a lot of sources and has been known to break news before. Now, the information he put out on Twitter here indicates the following. It says basically, and I'll show you the tweet here, that the negotiations have gone cold, and it's believed that Kaprizov is back in Russia, and CSKA has a lot of interest in signing him to bring him home to play in the KHL and for the Olympics as well. So certainly they get a lot of people up in arms and certainly cause a lot of concern for Minnesota Wild fans as well. Now, there was also a follow-up story by Michael Russo of The Athletic, and he had talked about this in The Athletic a little bit before, not to this degree, saying that negotiations were gone cold and there's a real risk, but given the fact that negotiations were not going well, we could say earlier, a few weeks back, he had discussed it in an article before. So it's not a huge shock here to find out that negotiations are not going well, but to hear the fact that Kaprizov's already using the leverage, the only real leverage he has, of heading back to Russia this early in negotiations, it just doesn't look like a good sign. Now, Kevin Weeks, when he played, he shares the same agent that represents Kaprizov here today. So I almost can guarantee that the information Weeks is getting is coming from the agent in this scenario. Now, it was later revealed that Kaprizov was indeed in Russia. He's over in Moscow now. He's there for a friend's wedding, and it is revealed as well that GM Bill Guerin was made aware of this, and he was also told that obviously, given the fact that he's going back home, there's bound to be some hoopla where he doesn't have a contract and all that, and there could be some rumors come out. So it's not a huge shock likely to Billy Guerin in the Wild organization at this point, but still, I'm sure they have some concerns. Now, the reason why Kaprizov doesn't really have a whole lot in the way of leverage, or at least besides this, is a couple of reasons. One, he signed a 1-year contract. That's due to his age. There are restrictions over how long your entry-level contract can be based on how old you are. So because he was an older player, he got a 1-year deal. So he's now a restricted free agent, but he's not even a full RFA. Like, there's some things that other RFAs would have that he wouldn't. For example, you need 2 years pro to have arbitration rights. So he does not have that yet. So no arbitration means that no third party can settle the contract for the Wild and the player if they cannot come to terms on their own. Secondly, he has not played enough to be eligible to receive an offer sheet, so the Wild have no risk that way that another team is going to try to swoop in and offer him a sweet deal that he'll take and risk losing him that way. Of course, they would be compensated, but still, they'd rather have the player in their lineup. So from that regard, he doesn't have any kind of a real leverage that more experienced restricted free agents gets. And of course, because he's restricted and unrestricted, when free agency hits, he's not a UFA. He can't just sign anywheres. So the Wild have no risk of losing him to another NHL team or really having any issues that way at all. The only real leverage he has is to threaten to play back in Russia. That's it. So the fact that we're already there is not a good sign at all. Now, one of the few comparables that Kaprizov would have would be Artemi Panarin. Panarin came over to the NHL with Chicago at a similar age. He was an older, more mature player, but he ended up playing for 4 years in the NHL before he cashed in and got his huge contract from the New York Rangers. So, I mean, he certainly made decent money, but not at the level that Kaprizov apparently is looking for now with the Wild after one season. So yes, he's an awesome dynamic player, bound to be a big star in this league, but I can understand why Garrett would be hesitant to back up the Brinks truck and simply pay him on an 8-year deal, at a huge amount of money. Now, the other point of contention here, apparently, which Russo talks about in his article in The Athletic, is that it's not just about money, it's also about term. The Wild smartly would want to sign him to a max contract right now. That's certainly where things are at with them. They are very impressed by Kaprizov. They know that as each year goes by, he's probably going to continue to get better and better, and he's likely going to be more expensive the longer it takes to get ink on paper for a long-term contract. So any GM would rather have those longer-term deals. It's almost always better for the team. It gives the players security, but if they're willing to take the risk and it works out for them, they most always make money going shorter term. So apparently, Guerin and the Wild are real interested in like a 7-8 year deal, and he wants a short-term deal around 3 years. 3 years would walk him directly to being an unrestricted free agent, and the Wild apparently are willing to budge a little bit on that 7-8 year deal, but they don't want to go anything less than 4, preferably 5 or more, so they can at least buy up at least a couple of his UFA years. So, of course, if they do that and they get the contract they want, he's going to be in his early 30s when it expires, and that just doesn't seem appealing to him at all. Now, I'm not sure what kind of AAV we're talking about, but it was believed that he would have been the highest paid player in Minnesota Wild history on that 8-year deal. So look at what they gave Parise and Suter. Obviously, it's going to be more than that. We're probably looking at somewhere in that $9 million range would be my guess is what's on the table or what was being offered. And obviously, he's pretty confident in himself that if he gets a shorter term deal, which obviously would be less money now, that he can make even more than that in 3 to 4 years' time. And maybe he's right. I don't know. But it's certainly a growing concern here for this organization as they prep for this offseason. And obviously that contract is going to be a significant one to know what they have to build around. They also have to sign some other players like Joel Eriksson. They have some expansion draft issues that they have to work through. They could lose a goalie in Cam Talbot. They could lose a defenseman in Matt Dunn. But like the Wild are in position to lose one of the more so than most teams in this draft for expansion here. So we're probably going to see them make at least 1, maybe 2 trades even ahead of expansion, and probably 1 for sure, so they can limit their exposure and get something back in return that they can continue to work with. So it doesn't mean that Kaprizov isn't going to get signed. It doesn't mean he is going to go back to Russia, but it's just concerning with the fact that the agent's already getting information out through a former player that he represented before and is connected through the media to get this information out. It's not good, and I can understand why Wild fans would be upset and concerned, and it's really difficult to say how things are going to go here in the next little while. I mean, there's plenty of time for them to get something worked out, but it's believed that if the Wild are going to have any chance to get this done, that they're going to have to come down on term, probably settle for at most 5 years, and that's probably going to take some real hardcore negotiating. Maybe even 4 is probably the best we'll see, but he's wanting 3 right now. So, I mean, it makes sense in a way from the player's perspective. Think of it like this. We know that we're in a flat cap world, lost revenue, pandemic had a major impact. So clearly we know that the cap's not going up for a while. Because of that, in 3 or 4 years' time, he should be able to get more money. He should be in an escalating cap situation by then. At least we hope so. So there's that. Secondly, the Minnesota Wild obviously had a much improved season this year, better than most of us expected, largely due to his play. He's probably wondering, I don't want to commit just yet after 1 season to a long-term deal. I want to see what you're going to build around here and see how much better this team can get before I'm going to commit to staying here for 7 or 8 years and giving that kind of commitment. So it does kind of make sense, But at the same time, after waiting over 5 years for him to show up, have one rookie season, and be already dealing with this kind of negotiations, it's frustrating, and I'm sure stressful for sure. So we will see what happens. At this point, we can't say with any kind of certainty that he'll bolt for the KHL, but I can guarantee you that they'd love to have him back. He was a great player over there. And like I said, for him to, have a lot of money offered for him to go back, play in his country, all that, and obviously at that point be guaranteed the Olympic spot and all those types of things is going to be interesting for him. So we'll have to keep an eye on this situation as it evolves. But let me know your concern for the Wild in Kaprizov in the comments here. Let me know what you think would be a fair deal. Now, before we jump any further into today's video, I need to pause for a moment here and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. Now, in other news today, we want to talk a little bit about Seth Jones and Dougie Hamilton. And so there are some reports out there that a team like the Chicago Blackhawks are expressing interest in one or both of these players. And to a degree, I've seen some reports saying that the Leafs apparently have had conversations about a potential Seth Jones deal. We've also seen word about Dougie Hamilton in the Leafs, but at this point, there's no connection there. I think mostly this media talking about whether Dougie would want to come home and play another guy from the Toronto area. And there's some that believe he'd be a great fit there. Others feel if it wouldn't be. So we will see. But when it comes to Jones and the Hawks, there is believed to be conversations. Now, one report I saw indicated that Chicago might be willing to trade Kirby Dach for Seth Jones. I was shocked by this. I could not believe. Now that came, the information I saw was on Twitter was through Barstool and Spit and Chiclet. So, I'm not sure how much there is to that, but why would the Blackhawks want to trade Dach? I understand your interest in Jones. I understand your interest in Hamilton. Hamilton you can get as a free agent if you wait it out instead of making a trade. Jones, you're a year away from being able to do that with. So if you want to acquire him now, I get it. They can use help on the blue line. He's a great guy that they could use. There's no doubt about it. I think he'd be a good fit there. But to move your, future number one center in Kirby Dach, who looks to be a fantastic young player, I don't think it's worth it. To me, if I'm a Hawks fan, you're only getting 1 year of Seth Jones without the guarantee of an extension. Now, if you work out an extension as part of it, makes it a little bit better. But still, that's not a deal I'm sure that I would do, but I guess we'll see what Bowman and the Hawks do. I mean, I understand their interest here. I would think it would make more sense for them to maybe go after Hamilton in free agency would be the more logical choice here. Why would you want to give up such a terrific young asset? Yes, your blue line's important, but you also have some solid young D prospects yourself that are still kind of growing and developing, and it could be, pretty substantial pieces down the road as well. You're going to have another decent pick in the 21 draft here. So to me, I don't do that deal, but you know what? We'll see what Bowman does, and like I said, I can understand why they would talk to Hamilton in free agency. When it comes to Toronto, one piece that I saw was a possible trade for Riley for Jones. Now, Morgan Riley's and Seth Jones are in a similar predicament where they both have a year left, and they both would, have comparable money, so it wouldn't be a huge, financial cap hit swap here for either team. But to me, I don't see that as being realistic either. To me, like I've mentioned before, I think Riley being moved by the Leafs is a real possibility, but I do not see Seth Jones being the target. For one, it's believed that he has all of the Canadian teams on his modified no trade clause, so he doesn't sound like he wants to come to Canada anyway. So I don't think a team like the Leafs are going to be able to get that deal done. So I'm not sure there's really much point. Now, like I said before, Dougie Hamilton from the area, a hometown boy again, and I can understand why the media is talking about it, but there's no way, in my opinion, they're going to be able to afford Dougie Hamilton. They can barely afford to keep Zach Hyman. There's a high risk of them losing him. They might have to trade Riley for something cheaper on the roster to try to create some flexibility that way. Hamilton's rumored to be looking for $8-9 million. There's no way that's going to happen. They would have to create even more cap space, which maybe they could figure it out, but holy jumpins, it would be some hard, and they would be even weakened in other areas. To me, I don't see it happen, especially where he's going to probably want a long-term deal. This is his one time to hit a home run here and get him make a contract on the book. So to me, I don't see the Leafs making sense for either of those defensemen. The Riley for Jones part kind of does. It gets you a different kind of defenseman, but if he's not going to stick around, I'm not sure you do that. And like I said, there's a lot of word that he can block the trade anyway through the trade protection in his contract. So to me, Chicago makes more sense, but would you trade Kirby Dach for Seth Jones? I wouldn't, but let me know what you think down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. Let me know your thoughts on everything discussed today, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.